the Carolinas overnight, causing evacuations and flooding from the mountains to the Piedmonts. Good evening, everyone. And first at 5 tonight, the worst of the problems seem to be up in the high country, where parts of the mountains saw more than a foot of rain.
Now, we have team coverage of flood problems from Avery, Caldwell, Catawba, Mitchell, Watauga, and Anson counties. We begin with News Channel 3's Melinda Law, who is standing by live in Avery County. Melinda?
Well, Denise, this is the command center for Ground Zero. Beyond this point, miles of flood damage and devastation. There are pieces of houses scattered about, trash and debris everywhere. Since 11 o'clock last night, they've been battling water. And just wait until you see what they woke up to this morning. A 90-year-old woman has to find a new home. The foundation was washed out from under the house, and it's now resting about 200 feet from where it used to be. Luckily, she was next door at her son's house.
When the house started moving, it just shorted the power out, you know, electrical ball of fire, and then the house just drifted right around there and into that. I expected it to just collapse under the pressure of the water. How it held up, God only knows.
Utter devastation. Roaring River was just that Wednesday night. It's a community in complete ruins. The main roads, where you can find them, are warped, torn, and ripped apart. This is the only way to get around.
They had to drag cars out the bridge, and the culvert's gone completely up near my house. Like I said, there's a big 60-foot gully. There's no way across. You know, we're having to walk down to the store to try to get some things that we need.
Some people were trapped inside their homes, finally rescued by workers in chest-high water. That's why when the neighbors came out and took a look at all this devastation, they were amazed. No child was missing, and no one was hurt.
See right under there, there's a truck.
Neighbors look around helplessly. There's little some can salvage. Cars are hardly recognizable, crushed and mangled by tons of water and rushing debris. The roaring river is normally 2 to 3 feet deep, but at midnight swelled into a massive wall of rushing water. Today, it's a sobering sight as the roaring waters finally begin to recede. And obviously here the cleanup is going to be massive. We want to say a special thanks to Gary Johnson. He took us through the damage and the debris on his four-wheeler. Right now we have team coverage. Steve Onesorts joins us live now, and obviously there are many more victims in the area. Steve.
Well, the mountains act as a funnel for the rain when it comes through, and all the low-lying areas and in the valleys are very susceptible to have some very severe flooding. And in this case, in the mountain areas, the high country seem to get hit the hardest. In the town of Bakersville, they have a lazy creek going through the town, Cane Creek. But last night, it didn't just go through it, it went over it.
Hey, 77 wasn't nothing compared to this.
Dozens of homes and businesses in Bakersville were destroyed. A muddy mess from the floors to the countertops.
Mud, all the sinks got mud in it, the stove, the whole works.
It was Cane Creek that did the damage, roaring right through the town last night. At least 30 homes are history.
I'm 30 years old and I don't really have much, but amazes you how quick it can get gone from you.
Even those who didn't get wet last night are feeling the pinch here. The main road is out. The town's water system kaput.
Oh, it's a disaster.
The National Guard has brought tankers in so people have something to drink. And they're also here to protect what's left.
Basically trying to make sure we get no looting, no criminal activities, basically trying to keep everything under control and as low-key as possible.
For now, a stunned silence in this town. Still disbelief that home is not home anymore.
It's ruined everything.
Now, the mountain folks are pretty resilient people, and they say they're going to come back, they're going to rebuild, and they're going to be okay. The area, as we said before, has been hit by floods before, but nothing like this in the areas that we showed you. It was a tough night for everyone, and they're hoping that things can only get better from here on out. Back to you.
All right, Steve, amazing. Let's find out if things are going to get better, and are we through with the worst of this?
Those were stunning pictures we just saw. News Channel 3 senior meteorologist Eric Thomas joins us now live with first warning weather. Eric, what's up?
Well, I can tell you, Paul, what's up is this. The clouds, as you see behind me, are are starting to break up, and that's very good news. In fact, towards the end of the sequence, you're definitely seeing some sunshine breaking on through. This is the late afternoon hours, obviously, here across Charlotte, North Carolina. Now, let's talk about what happened, obviously, overnight last night. And for you people who were up late, you might have seen me very busy here breaking in with a tornado warning that was actually moving up I-77 and then hooked up I-85. Fortunately, that did not produce much in the way of a tornado. Total rainfall in Charlotte, only 2/3 of an inch of rain. No big deal, but you head up into the mountains, as you've heard, we've had very heavy rain and, of course, extremely severe damage as a result of the swollen rivers and the tributaries. Here's a couple of more reports for you. 3.5 inches of rain in Avery County, where we both saw Melinda and also Steve reporting from, but we had even heavier amounts. Mount Mitchell between 6 and 7 inches there. Brevard over 8 inches. I also had a report of over 9 inches of rain in Spruce Pine. That's in Mitchell County. And if you're really looking for a wild total, you head back over into the extreme western sections here around Jackson County. Hog Back picked up over 13 inches of rainfall. Is there any more rain coming? The answer is yes, but don't panic. We're thinking just a few leftover renegade showers overnight tonight. We might be talking about an additional 1/4 of an inch of rain. Shouldn't be anything too problematic, but again, it could aggravate the situation just a little bit. The weekend looking much better. Back to the studio.
Okay, Eric, thanks. Now, one place in Caldwell County that's seen more than its share of flooding is Collegeville. Folks there say last night's flooding wasn't the worst they'd ever seen, but experience has taught them not to take any chances. Many moved out in the middle of the night to higher ground.
It's a long ways from the house, but always err on the side of safety.
By daybreak, river levels were already going down. A few people were blocked by washed-out bridges, but they're counting their blessings that it wasn't any worse. Our team coverage continues on the news at 5:30 with reports from Anson County and Catawba County, plus pictures from a dramatic rescue in flood-stricken Tennessee. That's all coming up at 5:30.
In other news now, a sad story today from western Rowan County.
Not the worst we've seen, Jeff. Okay, thank you for that report. Emergency workers say the counties with the worst damage are Mitchell, Avery, and Watauga, and they're bracing for the possibility of more flooding. In Boone and Watauga County, floodwaters ate away part of Highway 105 and dumped mud everywhere. Crews assembled early this morning to start cleaning up the mess. In Avery County, emergency workers say floodwaters have damaged hundreds of homes and cars. The pictures are dramatic. Homes washed right off their foundation. Take a look at that. About 100 more homes are cut off where rising water has closed roads.
A Salvation Army disaster relief team is on the scene to help flood victims in Avery County, and National Guardsmen are headed there too. They met at the Federal Emergency Management Agency in Hickory today. The guards are taking in water trailers, generators, and four-wheel drive vehicles.
We've still got some isolated folks with some private and state bridges out, and we're trying to assess how to get to those folks and how to get emergency services and food over to them.
It is a rough situation, and the last thing these people need is the only ones dealing with dangerous conditions. Flooding is blamed for at least 6 deaths in the southeast. Some of the worst conditions are in northeastern Tennessee, where a rescue worker was dragged under this swift current, but he was able to get back on his feet. Crews ferried people by boat across the Doe River this morning, but a rescue last night didn't go as well. A boat sank with 4 emergency workers on board, and only 3 were rescued. Well, days of rain are creating misery as far north as New York. 24 hours of rain and melting snow have left many streets underwater. Authorities have closed several roads, forcing neighbors to use boats to get around.
News Channel 3.
5:30. Thank you for making us your choice for news tonight.
Eyewitness News at 6 is coming up in just a minute.
It's amazing that everyone got out alive.
Amazing when you see how thunderstorms ravage the Carolinas. 1 minute a road is there, the next it's not. Raging water cuts a giant gorge through one road.
People try to save the few things that didn't get crushed or ruined by the floods.
Help is on the way. The military has landed to reach some people who are stranded up in the mountains.
We'll have complete storm team coverage of all the damage and of the weather headed our way.
The 6 o'clock report is next.
From the news team covering the Carolinas, this is Channel 9 Eyewitness News, 6 o'clock.
And good evening to you. The National Guard is in action at this hour, trying to help residents of the Carolinas put things back together after the early morning storms. Heavy rains fell across much of the state, leaving a trail of destruction from the mountains to the east coast. Now, good evening. Our storm team coverage does continue at 6 o'clock. The mountains were hit hardest by our severe weather.
Roads and bridges were flooded, homes were destroyed, and tonight the rebuilding process is already beginning. Now, we're going to start in Avery County today. That's where our storm team reporter Jim Bradley is standing by.
Side of the mountain in Avery County. I'm Jim Bradley, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
Now, we had a problem with the tape. We'll be back with that story in just a moment. Now, if you'll hold right where you are, we'll tell you what's happening in and around Asheville, where
That's right.
roads were flooded and closed in the Asheville area. Roll the teleprompter so I can read it, please. Thank you. This race car track was flooded. A mudslide in Greensboro. If you don't roll it slowly, I can't read the teleprompter.
Right there.
All right, now we're ready with Jim Bradley. Let's go to Jim.
In more ways than one, Avery County has a rough road ahead of it. 2 days of heavy rains have washed out roads like this one in Roaring Creek and drenched the spirits of many residents.
I was raised up in there, and I've never saw anything like it. It just demolished everything up there.
Because of the damage, which washed this road completely away and crumpled the cars on it, state road crews are making repairs their top priority. On this afternoon after the flood, the water itself is back down. But with groceries in her arms, Billy Hughes is proof it'll take ingenuity and resourcefulness to get around. And where are you going now?
I'm going back home.
How far is that?
It's about 4 miles on top of the mountain.
This National Guard helicopter gave county officials their best chance to survey the damage. And a convoy of trucks and troops are now here as well, ready to help with anything, even meals tonight.
They have the equipment and the manpower to take those out into the community and provide them to the affected residents.
And tonight, this mountain community is still knee-deep in mud and up to here with the flood.
We're really tired with the way Mother Nature deals with us there.
Right now, there are a lot of people tired, including emergency crews. But I'll tell you one thing, the most popular vehicle here in Avery County right now is probably one of those three-wheel ATVs. But not just those. People are using anything they can find, even a garden tractor I saw in one case, to get back up the side of the mountain. In Avery County, I'm Jim Bradley, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
And the Air National Guard is hard at work in the mountain counties. Here's just how much manpower is helping out. About 225 soldiers are on duty in Mitchell, Avery, and Watauga counties. 25 Humvees and 2 helicopters are on standby. 34 2.5-ton trucks and 12 400-gallon water trailers with drinking water are there as well.
And the damage is hard to believe when you see it from the ground, but from the air, it's even more incredible. From Chopper 9, you can see how the severe band of storms sliced through Avery County in the small town of Minneapolis. A rock slide that just about covers the entire road. A pickup truck literally picked up and slammed on its side. Racing water sliced through the road as easy as a knife through butter. And Mother Nature got really angry, sending rushing waters that created a huge gorge where the road once was. In and around Asheville, roads were flooded and closed by the rain. These 2 guys drove their boat around Buncombe County, where they normally would have been driving their car. And this racetrack was flooded out and was probably better suited for boat racing today.
A mudslide in Greensboro topples a 30-foot retaining wall, causing some serious damage. It happened at an apartment complex in Greensboro about 3:30 this morning as the heavy rain fell. The mud knocked down the wall, pushed around, and damaged some vehicles.
All of a sudden, only thing I noticed was a big tidal wave of
coverage from Hampton and Roan Mountain.
The absolute devastation caused by this flood was most evident in the communities of Hampton and Roan Mountain. Cars were swept away, houses and trailers were diminished to scrap metal. The sudden sheer force of the river took everyone by surprise. Some people, like James Payne, lost everything. When you arrived this morning, what did you find?
Nothing but scrap of metal.
What are you going to do now?
Nothing I can do. I ain't got insurance. I just had paid for the thing.
Mildred Johnson has lived in Carter County since 1953. She says she's never seen anything like this flood. Before she knew it, she was up to her waist in water, trying to get to higher ground.
I was in the trailer, and next thing I know, the water was coming in the trailer.
How high was the water when you left?
Up to my waist here. And they dragged me through the water.
Here, a trailer slammed into a house, knocking it off of its foundation and smashing it to pieces. Loose propane tanks remain a volatile concern to cleanup crews.
Say 8 or 9 o'clock, it started coming up fast.
Reno Weisenhunt has lived near Roan Mountain for a long, long time, and he says he's never seen anything like it.
Not in the 37 years I've been here. It's not been nothing compared to this. This has been the worst I've seen.
In Roan Mountain, Karen Robinette, News Channel 11.
Our team coverage of the devastating floods continues, with people in Carter County picking up the pieces today.
Many of those evacuated from their homes returned later to find that much of what they had is lost. News Channel 11's Natalie Fonts has details of cleanup efforts.
The thing is gone. We had some new products in there, like a washer and a chair, recliners and stuff like that, and new mattresses on the bed. Now we got nothing.
Larry Presnell is lucky to be alive today. He and his wife live in this house on Northeast Street in Elizabethton. His home, like many others in the area, was devastated by the heavy rains. He and his wife barely made it out of the house in time.
I didn't think we had a chance the way the water was coming. I kept hearing stuff hit the side of the house, and I said it's all over with.
He and many others like him spent the day cleaning up and salvaging anything they could from their homes. Robert Berry couldn't believe the devastation to his home. He and his neighbors spent the day trying to pump out all the water from his basement.
The whole basement's full of water, about 8 feet of water.
The water not only flooded his home, but knocked out his fence and moved the shed across the yard.
It did a lot of damage in a short period of time.
These homes on Northeast Street really got the brunt of it. The waters engulfed their homes in the wee hours of the morning. Many people didn't think that they could get out safely. Now today, all they're left with is to test the damage and clean up.
The washer and dryer is gone, TV, VCR, my exercise equipment, all of it electrical is going to be gone.
Residents weren't the only victims. Business owners also spent the day scraping away the nightmares of the rains.
The flooring in the hallway there's that wooden parquet. It's swelled and it's coming loose from the concrete, coming unglued, and will have to be replaced. Lucky, we're very lucky.
In Elizabethton, I'm Natalie Fonts reporting for News Channel 11.
Many of the people we spoke to are thankful that police officers and neighbors were around to help them get out of their homes during the heavy rain.
The floodwaters are receding, but now residents are trying to come to terms with what's left behind. In some cases, that's nothing. The Red Cross has set up evacuation shelters in the following areas for those affected by the flooding: Cloudland High School, Little Milligan School, and Cloudland High School, and as you see there, Hampton Elementary. Dispatchers with Carter County 911 are urging residents not to call 911 unless it's an emergency, but you can call the Red Cross if you need assistance. That number is 1-888-578-7531.
It's been a terrible day in the area, and the big question everyone asking tonight, is the rain going to continue?
For the answer, we turn it over to meteorologist.
Creeks and rivers are high. The damage from storms that charged through the Carolinas.
This savage line of thunderstorms struck in the darkness, but daylight revealed the real pictures of destruction. In Haywood County, a road literally eaten away by rushing water. A home smashed by winds and water. And underneath this pile of trees and telephone poles somewhere is a car.
We have live storm team coverage of where this weather is headed and also what it has left behind. Our storm team meteorologist Lainey Pope shows us there is a break in the weather coming. And Channel 9's Michelle Kaczynski shows you the problems that the storm's runoff is causing here in the Carolinas. And we'll begin with the storm team's Dave Faraday, who is in Avery County right now, where roads have literally just washed away. Dave?
Well, Suzanne, we're right along the creek, and you can see that it's still moving. I want to show you something. I'm going to throw this piece of wood out here. I don't know if John can follow that, but you can see it just takes off right downstream. Now imagine if you had a car or if you had a house in front of this water. It's been rushing like this. It was much higher last night. Just imagine all the kinds of damage you would get.
The rushing water ripped some homes off their foundations, carrying them downstream. Some ended up on roadways. Others came within inches of being destroyed.
All this water and the noise, tremendous amount of noise, and it's just like, are you going to get out with your life? Are you going to get your mother and wife and sister out?
Car washed against the side of the door.
Sue Webb says her family was saved when a car slammed into her back door, preventing water from coming in.
The door won't shut down. It kept it from coming on and breaking the glass and coming on in.
Others weren't so lucky, like Pat and Jean Burleson downstream. The powerful water rushed through their kitchen, their dining room, and living room.
I had the stereo and thing on it, washed it all. I reckon in here. I can't find it no more where it's at.
Nearly everyone suffered some type of loss. If it wasn't their home, it was their car. The damages made it nearly impossible to tell model from model. But amazingly, despite all this property damage, no one here was injured.
No one hurt. It's just unreal to see trailers, houses destroyed, cars washed down the river. It's just unbelievable.
I'm told that they got 15 inches of rain overnight, and it caused this riverway here, this creek, to come 15 feet above flood level. Now, I'm told that normally you can walk across this thing. Obviously, you can't do it now, and last night it was much worse than what you're seeing right over here. Reporting live in Avery County, Dave Faraday, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
Thanks, Dave. And those weather problems closed schools in Avery County. There will be no classes for students tomorrow, Friday. It's an optional teacher work day in Avery County tomorrow. Schools were closed in Watauga County also today, and that gave crews at Valley Cruces Elementary a chance to clean up. Floodwaters ran into 4 classrooms, and they muddied up the teachers' parking lot. But the principal says everything should be ready to return to normal by tomorrow.
Here, but primarily the maintenance crew from the county, and they're wonderful. They have vacuumed and vacuumed and vacuumed water out of the school. We have 4 different classrooms that were flooded.
She says flooding is not unusual at the Riverside School.
The Charlotte-Mecklenburg Swift Water Rescue Team is helping today in all this high water. Some of the team's members headed to Avery County this morning. Part of the team actually left last night. The team's captain told us they have good reason to help out if someone gets trapped.
We're here to assist them. Back in July, we had some assistance from people in the mountains, and we're certainly glad to return the favors.
The Swift Water Rescue Team is made up of specially trained rescue crews. And tonight on Eyewitness News at 6, we will show you what they do and also the dangers they face. Eyewitness News has learned that this rescue team is now working in Avery, Mitchell, and Watauga counties tonight. We'll show you exactly what they're doing tonight at 6.
Well, it's not raining now, but skies outside don't look like a promise of better weather yet. We'll take a live look at Channel 9 Tower Cam. Well, there is a break there. The cloudy sky still hanging over the Queen City. Is that dry weather on the way? Let's check in now with Storm Team meteorologist Lainey Pope.
It is definitely on the way, Bill, but just not quick enough. We do have another round of showers and possibly a few isolated thunderstorms in the forecast for tonight. And you saw how the rescue teams for Charlotte were able to go elsewhere. That's because Charlotte was bared the brunt of the very heavy rains, just over 1.25 inches of rain in the Charlotte area. Now, Boone and Asheville up close to 5 inches from this 3-day storm. And then some other towns. Notables here, Pisgah Forest in Haywood County over 7 inches, Mount Hardy in Transylvania County reporting 10 inches, and the town of Hogback in Jackson County at almost 13.5 inches. You can see who got the heavy rain today, mainly across the eastern Piedmont and the coastal areas, and the good news is that it's all making its way offshore. But notice there are still a few stray showers back to the west. The cold front is still to the west of us. The cold front will bring us better weather in the form of an end to the rainfall, but it will be bringing cooler weather. First, we have to deal with possibly a few spotty showers and isolated thunderstorms with that cold front later this evening, but the worst is over, and I'll be back with your full forecast coming up in just a few minutes. Back to you.
Okay, Lainey, good. That's what we wanted to hear. Certainly encouraging news considering the kind of night we have been through.
I mean, it wasn't just the Carolinas hit by this storm system. It cut a path through the entire southeast. In Shelby County, Alabama, a little girl was killed. Floodwater swept away a 5-year-old girl. You're looking at video from the rescue efforts here. The front then moved through Georgia. Take a look at the damage by a tornado in Greensboro, Georgia. Many of the damaged buildings are in the town's historic district. And in Carter County, Tennessee, at least 4 people are dead and another is missing in floodwaters there. A rescue worker was saved after his boat turned over. The saturated soil gives all this rain no place to go.
And you don't really have to be in a low-lying area to be under the threat of flash floods. Channel 9's Michelle Kaczynski continues our storm team coverage live now from a very soggy Union County. Michelle, how's it looking out there?
Right now, I'm looking right at the sun, and I'll tell you, it looks terrific. But both Union and Anson counties got a lot more flooding than they bargained for, and they are still dealing with it. We were in both counties today, and right now we're in Union, where just one road remains closed, but they're getting a lot of this stuff, a lot of potholes, and in some places, roads literally disintegrating along the edges. In Anson County, it's a little bit different. There, more than a dozen roads are still closed, still a mess. The very second you enter Anson County, you're greeted by this, floodwaters. A sort of warning there's much more ahead, where creeks and roads merge into one muddy mess.
3 or 4 miles, you had to go out your way to get to the courthouse, you know.
Kind of annoying to you?
Yes, it's very annoying.
It hasn't been crippling, just secondary roads, but 20 of them were closed. It's dangerous. And look how close this creek has come to Route 74.
That's about the worst I've seen probably in the last couple of years.
Yesterday, neighboring Union County was worse.
So I had to be up there because I got a Dodge four-wheel drive truck, and I started right into my headlights there, and I had to back out of it. I couldn't get across.
The roads took a beating. Look at this waterlogged asphalt. You can bend it with your bare hand. Now the water is subsiding, but there are new irritations, the mess and the potholes. Glenn Quigley saw both firsthand. Yesterday, his road washed out completely.
Filled here and there with potholes where the water won't drain under the roads. Because you got to cut gutters along the side and let the water to drain.
Now for many, that big storm has left behind a big cleanup. And there is some good news. While neither of those counties expected all the flooding they got, after last night's rain started, they were expecting the worst, and it actually turned out to be not so bad. Today, Anson County had some mixed success with its roads. While earlier there were about 20 of them closed, by now they were able to reopen 4, but then they had to go back and shut a new one down. So they're hoping it won't be long before everything will be open again. We are live in Union County. Michelle Kaczynski, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
Good, Michelle. The wet weather made for trouble spots all over North Carolina. In Alamance County, the rain turned some creeks into rivers. Take a look. Some of the smaller streams even had white caps, and many were well over their banks. In Raleigh, flash floods hit the low-lying areas of the city. Only about an inch of rain fell in Raleigh, but some parts of the city had runoff in low-lying areas. And even though the driving was treacherous, that didn't stop some people in Henderson County from taking chances. Drivers were rescued after they ran through barricades on closed streets.
And storm team coverage continues on Eyewitness News at 5:30 and 6 o'clock tonight. A tornado did touch down in South Carolina. We'll take a look at the kind of damage it did there. And we are also going to take you to Mitchell County. They were hard hit. Entire homes were swept away.
The search for a missing 5-year-old girl from Hope County is over. Next, as we cover the...
This is News Channel 11's 5:30 report.
The tragedy and devastation is widespread.
Nearly everyone in Carter County has been affected by the flooding that bombarded residents from Roan Mountain and Hampton to Swimming Pool Road and Dennis Grove. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Tim Cable.
And I'm Amy Caulfield. What used to be homes for many residents are now just empty lots, all grim reminders of the awesome force of Mother Nature.
The waters are now receding, but cleanup efforts have really just begun. 4 people are confirmed dead and many others are missing. News Channel 11's A.J. Sterling has been at the scene since this morning and joins us now with the latest. A.J., what's happening now?
Tim, as night falls, the devastation of these floodwaters is starting to sink in. At least 5 people are dead now, with at least another 8 that are still missing after flash floods crashed through Hampton. The floods came so quickly that many Carter County residents had no other choice but to flee to shelters. Hundreds of people were evacuated. Some are still not able to return home this evening.
One of my neighbors come a beating and banging on. I thought she was knocking my door down. And I jumped up and run to the door in my gown tail, and I said, "What in the world's wrong?" She said, "The waters are getting up over the road." I said, "Oh, good Lord."
Dozens Dozens of families are still hoping their loved ones are not in these waters where temperatures dip as low as the 40s. If you are missing someone still due to the flooding, you are asked to call the Carter County Sheriff's Department immediately. That number is 542-1852. Coming up tonight at 6, we'll have the latest update on the devastation caused by these floodwaters. Tim?
All right, AJ, thank you for that report.
Thanks.
What can family members do to speed up the efforts? We'll find out more on that in just a minute, but rescue efforts did start early this morning, long before the sun rose. You didn't have to see the water to know it was raging through the area. You could even hear it. News Channel 11 photographer John Bray was on the scene of the flooding all night through the morning. Christine Sorensen reports.
A rescue worker gulped for air as the water swept him down the street, turned river. Fortunately, he had ropes to save him. Just past midnight, people awoke to knocking at their doors.
We were in bed and the dog started barking. We didn't know what was going on. We heard it raining and got up and looked out, and water's coming up in the yard. They just told us it was best to get out.
As the night wore on, shelters flooded with people, just as the streets filled with water. People slept on bleachers. Dogs whimpered at their new surroundings. Children ran off their energy. Another day of school canceled. And some people just sat and worried, prayed.
It scared me. But I don't really know what's going to happen, but, you know, I've got my family, and that's all that matters to me.
The respite of Hampton Elementary School didn't last long. Nothing could stop the water from entering hours later. The water reached what some Carter County residents thought was untouchable. Elizabethton's famed Veterans Monument became an island in the night. Raging water threatened the town's most beloved landmark, the historic covered bridge. People left behind their homes and everything in them, not knowing what they'd find when the water receded.
Hopefully it won't come up that far, you know. Everything we got is down there, so you never think about it till it happens to you.
Most residents here never realized the sheer power of the rivers and water around them until it rose to an ugly level. Christine Sorensen, News Channel 11.
The Red Cross has set up several evacuation shelters to help assist those in need. Cloudland High School, Little Milligan School, and Elizabethton High School are open to anyone needing safe shelter. If you or your loved ones are in need of assistance, you can call the Red Cross at 1-888-578-7531. Others are also stepping up efforts to help. Pady Lumber Company in Elizabethton is accepting non-perishable food items, clothing, and toiletries until 6 o'clock tonight, but they will be open through Saturday.
Well, the ground is saturated, so, of course, what does this mean for the tri-state region?
Meteorologist Mark Reynolds has the answer in our first look at the forecast. Mark?
Well, unfortunately, we are now in a dry tongue of air, and that is bad news because we're looking at...
From WBTV Charlotte, Carolina's home for news, this is News Channel 3 at 6.
Good evening. First at 6 tonight, the recovery after heavy rain and flooding sweeps through the Carolinas. People all over woke up this morning to get a first look at the devastation.
And devastation it was, Nancy. The worst of it hit the mountains. We have team coverage of the disaster tonight. Beginning in Avery County, News Channel 3's Melinda Law is there.
The rushing river roared, swelled, and crashed through this community, leaving neighbors bewildered, stranded, lost. This home was lifted off its foundation and pushed aside about 200 feet. But the 90-year-old woman wasn't hurt. She was in her son's home next door.
When the house started moving, it just shorted the power out, you know, electrical ball of fire, and then the house just drifted right around there and into that. I expected it to just collapse under the pressure of the water.
Some people were trapped inside their homes, finally rescued by workers in chest-high water. That's why when the neighbors came out and took a look at all this devastation, they were amazed. No child was missing and no one was hurt. Cars were tossed around. This one, just a ball of metal, mangled and crumpled. Driveways and roads washed away. The main roads twisted and torn. It's a neighborhood in ruins.
I've never seen it this bad. It flooded back in about '93, but it wasn't anywhere near this bad. It's awful.
Now, it is unbelievable what kind of damage floodwaters can cause, and even as it gets dark at this hour, people are still trying to carry away what they can, trying to salvage what they can from their broken homes, trying to get it away from all the mud and the water. This is the worst flooding the people around here say that they have ever seen, and the cleanup is just beginning. Back to you.
We are stunned to see such damage, Melinda. Thank you. Again, North Carolina high country was the hardest hit by this flooding. In fact, there's still rivers of water standing in some towns.
Like the Mitchell County town of Bakersville. News Channel 3 Steve Onosorge saw the mess after a wall of water washed through that town. He continues our team coverage from Mitchell County.
It all happened so quickly here. In just a few hours, dozens of families lost everything.
The whole works. Everything's completely destroyed.
It was Cane Creek that overflowed last night, slamming mobile homes into each other, re-parking cars 50 yards downstream.
This got gone for me in about 35 minutes. It was all gone. Everything.
People did try to salvage what they could, but everything, it seemed, was, well,
full of mud.
Salvaged from this home, just 2 bags of clothes and a Bible.
Family history's wrote in their family history.
As many as 30 homes were destroyed here, and everyone is depending on the National Guard for something to drink.
Everybody's pretty well affected.
For many here, only one thing they can do.
Start all over again.
And everyone knows that's not going to be easy. Steve Onosorge, WBTV News Channel 3, Mitchell County.
And Mitchell County is one of the school systems that is closed tomorrow. Students won't have to go, and it's now an optional workday for teachers. The same thing in Avery County. Yancey County schools will open 1 hour late, with school buses running on safe roads only.
Paul, people in one Caldwell County community are used to high water and flooding. The rain fell fast and furiously in Collettsville last night. This is a low-lying community along the Johns River. The Red Cross helped folks evacuate to higher ground, but this morning the rain slackened off and water levels started to go down.
And people east of Charlotte have also been waiting for that water to recede.
Places like Lancaster, Union, and Anson counties are still reeling from flash floods earlier this week. This latest round kept many roads and bridges closed. Our team coverage continues now with News Channel 3's Jeff Atkinson in Anson County. Jeff?
Nancy and Paul, it's not near as bad out here in this part of the Piedmont as what you saw up in the mountains. We looked for examples of people who were in any danger. We didn't find any, but we found some people inconvenienced by the high water. The Rocky River had all it could handle today. The mighty water that separates Anson and Stanley counties spilled out beyond the trees that normally hold it in. A battle was fought here in 1780, but on this day, the river won the war and took over the field. Down the road a ways, you might see one of these. They're scattered all over the county today, and they mean business.
It's very easy for a car to float across once, and it's hard to judge just how deep that water is. They could easily end up in some bad trouble.
At its worst, there were about 24 bridges out at Anson County. This one that crosses Lanes Creek had whitecaps forming when we got there. And what's left on the highway shows how high the water rose. Behind Karen McCullum's house, the Brown Creek couldn't be contained. She's keeping a weather eye peeled.
Well, last night, yeah, it concerned me some, but I slept pretty good. But my husband keeps assuring me, you don't have to worry, it's not going to get up here. So as long as I have his assurance, it's pretty much okay.
Only about a dozen roads are closed here in Anson County tonight. Earlier, it was twice that. Back to you.
I'm glad to hear things aren't quite as bad there, Jeff. Well, we're all hoping most of this heavy rain is coming to an end.
Let's put that question to meteorologist Eric Thomas. He's in the Weather Center now with first warning weather. Eric?
Has been with Sullivan County EMS more than a decade and is a volunteer and member of the board of directors of the Kingsport Life-Saving Crew. Lisa Mitchell, News Center 5.
From WCYB, the region's #1 source for news, this is News Center 5 at 6.
The mark of this storm stretches deep into the mountains of western North Carolina. Mitchell County was one of those areas hardest hit, keeping emergency crews busy through the night and into the morning. In the Glen Ayers community, a dam has broken and roads are flooded. Rescuers have been pulling residents from their homes.
Still in shock. Property gone, loss, but that's life.
Residents in Glen Ayers say bridges are flooded out and travel tonight remains a challenge. Devastation in Carter County runs from Roan Mountain to Elizabethton. Raging waters have left countless homes gutted and house trailers buckled or sunk in deep mud. Numerous cars have been damaged or destroyed. And as the death toll has mounted, so have tales of survival. Hazel Fuller and her husband were swept off their porch.
When he went, he pulled me in, and we both went down between the two houses over towards that fence, and we grabbed a hold of the fence. That's the only thing that stopped us from continuing all the way down.
The couple held to the fence as long as 25 minutes before they were finally able to pull themselves to steps that led to safety. While downriver Elizabethton didn't sustain the brunt of the flood damage, business owners, residents, and city and county workers have been pumping water and shoveling mud all day. News Center 5's Greg Wallace reports on the cleanup effort.
As the swollen Doe River recedes, the cleanup begins. The cost of the damage can only be estimated. Water was 5 feet deep in the basement of this church.
And so we lost 3/4 of our Sunday school space in this.
Damage estimate?
Rough guess, I wouldn't have anywhere to begin really, but I would think $70,000, $75,000.
Having his car swept away in the flood, rescuing his mother-in-law, insurance agent Perry Perkins has a unique perspective on both cleanup and damage claims.
This is considered what we call an act of God, and actually for coverage, it's going to be hard for people to understand there's not a lot of coverage on homes.
Unless they have flood insurance?
Unless they have the flood coverage, yes, for the house and furnishings.
After you got in the car and was driving down the road, the water was, like moving the car.
Most felt if the crest was only inches higher, the damage would have been much worse.
We lost our deck out back. It could have been a lot worse. It just barely got inside the building.
At the county garage, a few of the older buses were damaged and some were even lost to the flood. The newer ones were moved to the higher ground. This foresight also paid off at the waterworks department, where workers shut down the pumps so they wouldn't be contaminated with flood waters.
I feel very confident that we'll be seeing some federal aid for this.
In Elizabethton, Greg Wallace, News Center 5.
Well, the flooding has brought too much water into the Carter County Elizabethton area, and as a result, there's the possibility of too little water to drink. And in some areas, that water may also be unsafe. The situation has brought a warning from officials to not drink water from the rural Carter County systems without at least boiling it.
We have some water supplies that are down. They'll be polluted. We're bringing in some emergency drinking water donated by the Red Cross. We'll deliver those to the centers today in the different areas. We'll have a water buffalo from Army Reserve that'll be coming in, and I've asked for help from the state to help us with a short-term solution.
Clark, who is heading up the emergency disaster operations for the county, says work will begin as soon as possible to restore the water systems that are down. Again, he urges caution against drinking the water until the okay is given. It's a somewhat different story in Elizabethton, where the flooding is not nearly as bad, but there are some problems with the water prompting caution.
The flooding did overrun the Hampton Springs plants. It required the shutdown of the pumping operation due to electrical failure. Higher elevations in the city are without water as we speak right now, and we are advising that people conserve water.
The treatment plant on Gap Springs Road is up and operational, but it cannot handle the entire load for the city. A propane emergency and severe flood damage at Hampton High School cancel plans for an emergency shelter there. A propane tank at the school washed out and leaked. Efforts to drain and burn off the remaining gas and the potential for an explosion caused Highway 19E to shut down in that area for a while. Meanwhile, school officials are assessing the damage.
Vocational buildings in pretty bad shape. There's carpet, all those classes, mud in them.
Campbell expects the school to remain closed at least through the weekend. The mountains of East Tennessee and western North Carolina frequently see flooding, although normally not this severe. Meteorologist Dave Dirks joins us now from the Weather Center. Dave, help us understand why last night was so bad.
Merrill, you got to remember that any time our mountainous terrain picks up a foot of rain, you're going to have serious flooding problems. So as a meteorologist, I asked myself, why did we get a foot of rainfall? I think we can boil it down to simply a very strong low-level flow of air that was butting head-to-head, almost in a perpendicular fashion to the mountains. And whenever you have this strong flow just off the Earth's surface, say, above the surface to several thousand feet, you're going to get a tremendous upwelling of air, and this is what produces those heavy rains as you move higher up into the atmosphere. In addition, we had about a foot of snow in some of the higher peaks that went with that rainfall, and I wanted to show you what Doppler radar looked like during some of the heaviest rainfall from about 8:45 last night through about 1 o'clock this morning. And note how this up-level flow of air was causing a near consistent and persistent area of rain that was training, if you will, over these same areas, the little streaks of yellow and the streaks of orange that were moving over Mitchell and Yancey, Avery, Watauga, Ashe counties, also Unicoi, Johnson, and Carter counties of northeast Tennessee. And it was just a situation that fortunately is very rare. And some good news, Merrill, a drier forecast on the way, and I'll have details on that in just a moment.
We'll be looking for that, Dave. Thank you.
This is home for news. This is News Channel 3 at 6.
Good evening. Our first story at 6, mopping up in the North Carolina mountains. Here's a look at what folks woke up to in many areas after a day of flooding. Homes ripped from their foundations, cars floating in a river of mud, and roads twisted and washed away. One person said it was like a bomb went off.
And the hardest hit county in North Carolina was Avery County. Today, emergency personnel walk through what's left of the small mountain towns as folks work to clean up. That's where News Channel 3's Steve Onesorge is standing by live. Steve, are things getting back to some semblance of normalcy?
Well, not really. It is still a mess. The river is back to its normal stage, but the community is certainly not back to normal yet. All the debris you can see here downstream, we're still a mile or so from the worst of the damage. We've got parts of a house, we've got some cans, we've got a lot of debris, trees, and so on, and that's the way it is all up and down Roaring Creek. It is a big problem for a lot of people, and for a lot of people, it means starting all over again. They were looking for anything they could save, but there really wasn't much.
Nobody's ever seen anything like this up in here.
Cars crushed, houses moved, roadways gone.
It's going to take a lot of money to recover.
State crews are trying to assess just how much money. Be a few days before they know. What they do know is the roads must be fixed first. Don't have a Humvee or a four-wheeler?
Oh, you can get out and walk.
No cars on the road today, but plenty of road on the cars. The DOT is working to change that.
It only takes about 2 weeks to get done.
Power crews are doing their thing, too.
We're just trying to get what houses we have got left back home.
There is a lot left to do in this community. The People's Church will need a lot of people to do it.
It's not a disaster. It's a miracle nobody is killed.
They will move forward here, but it will be tough to forget the horror of that night.
The water was up to my waist when I got ready to get out of the house, and my husband hollered, "Get out of the house," because he didn't know how far it was going to get up. And I could just see the cars and river coming down the street, and I started panicking, and it scared me.
It is something that the people around here will never forget, but they are looking to the future. They're hoping to really get the cleanup efforts underway this weekend. The DOT will be out here in full force, the electric crews. They're going to try to get some heavy equipment in there as soon as they can. They're going to have to clean out the river, clean out the debris, see what's left, and see where to go from there. And they're hoping that they can get some disaster money from the state. The disaster crews are still in there trying to assess everything. It will take some time, and they say it will be expensive to fix. Back to you.
I am still amazed to see those cars and how badly damaged they are. Steve, thank you. Well, just across the state line in Tennessee, the search is continuing for missing people. At least 6 people are known dead in East Tennessee. The latest victim was recovered this morning. His raft capsized on a river. Rescuers hope the calmer weather will make it easier to find the missing folks.
In other news, a major victory tonight for federal, state, and local police in their fight.
It sure is, and one saving grace, too, is after the storm has passed, we haven't seen the really cold weather that you could see this time of the year. It wouldn't be surprising to see temperatures below zero up in the mountains this time of the year. It just hasn't happened, so that's, I guess, a saving grace.
So you don't have all that ice then on top of all that. All right.
Exactly.
Thank you, John.
A local Red Cross disaster team is standing by to help flood victims in the western Piedmont. The crew plans to leave tomorrow morning for Newland, a small town in Avery County near Grandfather Mountain. Teresa Taylor joins us live from the Red Cross headquarters, where they're preparing a special van for the trip. Teresa, show us what they can do with this van.
Well, basically, they're preparing to feed about 300 people out of this specialized emergency van. They're going to be feeding some of the flood victims and probably some of the volunteers as well. These coolers will be filled with meat, vegetables, and fruit to feed the people. It'll be coming from some of the local Baptist churches out of the area. Now, Charlie Sanders has been doing this, what, about 5 years now?
That's correct. I've been doing it for 5 years. I've been on about 10 disasters.
And you're going to be going on the trip tomorrow. Tell us what you're expecting up there.
Well, really, we don't know what to expect. We're just going along. I'm taking my sleeping bag and my coffee pot and everything with me because you just don't know what to expect. One time you might have a place to stay, and when I was in Dakota, we didn't have no place to stay.
Obviously not an easy job, and you're volunteering for it. Why do you keep doing this every year?
Well, I'm a Baptist to start with, and that's part of my ministry to help to the people. And I feel like my little way, I'm doing a little contribution to help people.
Well, I'm sure to the folks out there it's going to be a huge contribution, and they'll appreciate you folks helping out. So as Tanya said, this truck will be leaving tomorrow morning to help out flood victims and the volunteers, and we'll hope to follow this as they go on their trip and bring you a report tomorrow.
I'm sure they'll be doing a lot of hard work up there. Thanks a lot, Teresa.
Well, tonight, National Guard troops are trucking in fresh water and water purification equipment to Avery County. Avery County is just southwest of Boone, and meteorologist Jeff Harden is up there live right now. And Jeff, bring us up to date. What's going on there today?
Cameron, I think the big thing that we have to talk about is the unbelievable destruction that we've seen courtesy of Jerry's Creek and Roaring Creek that are situated in Avery County down a little canyon off of the main highway through here. So certainly it has been a rough time, and as we rode through, we saw unbelievable devastation. Roaring Creek resembles a war zone, and Viola Webb's home is ground zero. The 89-year-old Webb's home of 50 years is a total loss thanks to Jerry's Creek. Behind me, you can see the wide swath that Jerry's Creek cut through this canyon as it roared downstream, and over here is Viola Webb's fuel oil tank. Now, the fuel oil tank didn't go anywhere, but Viola's house was actually picked up and carried downstream by the creek about 20 yards, and now it rests over the creek bed.
It's amazing that there's anything still in one piece.
Webb's family spent the day removing personal effects, including old photographs. Ann Webb says her mother-in-law is devastated.
She was in total shock. We had a time with her. She's a diabetic, so her sugar went real low. We had to get a lot, of attention in for her.
Inside the home, furniture is tossed about, clothes are strewn on the floor, and a chandelier and other pictures hang at an eerie angle.
So all we're doing is going to try to get what we can for our mother-in-law, anything that we can save for her. Okay. And then we'll go from there.
But going ahead from here will be hard. This home is uninsured, so the family is not quite sure what to do next. 16 families have been displaced by this flood, and many other homes are badly damaged here. A cold front has moved in, and so crews are out helping folks try to get warm.
Our major concern tonight is getting blankets to the families that are overcrowded in the homes. So we really want to get blankets into them or coats to make sure that with this cold front coming in that they're warm.
A couple of moments ago, we were hearing about the Western Piedmont effort. I want to let you know that the American Red Cross has really stepped up their effort as well, and they are going to be opening a center here in Newland in Avery County at the Avery County Senior Citizen Center, and that will start to coordinate some of the American Red Cross's response to this disaster in the 5 western North Carolina counties affected by this flood. And also the Avery County Partnership for Children is going to be gathering up food and clothing and other types of things as it is getting cold here in Avery County now, and so a lot of work to be done, and the folks here in Avery County throughout western North Carolina and on the national level with the Red Cross are getting geared up. Cam?
All right, thank you, Jeff Harden, live tonight in Avery County, where a lot of people need a lot of help. Thank you, Jeff.
A father gave his life to save his 2 small children from a burning home in Elkin. We'll bring you the complete story.
storm. A raging river. A wall of water floods the region in a flash. 4 men are called to fight the current on a rescue mission that would prove deadly to one of them.
It was the most terrifying experience I've had in my life.
Frederica Whitfield, rescue on the River Wild. Tonight, a Dateline special, Nature's Wrath. From Studio 3B in Rockefeller Center, here is Jane Pauley.
Good evening. Tonight, a Nature's Wrath special. We begin with a story that started out as a routine rescue. But what was to happen reminds us that no rescue mission is ever routine. 4 men called to duty late one night to save a community threatened by flash floods. A fast-moving river had overflown its banks, sweeping away everything in its path. And the danger these men would face, like the river's current itself, was swift and deep. Frederica Whitfield with the story of 4 ordinary men caught in the extraordinary power of nature's wrath.
It was a day of bad weather across the country last January. Ice, snow, and flooding. But nowhere was the flooding as bad as in Carter County, Tennessee.
Flash flood watch in effect for much of Kentucky, East Tennessee.
Nestled along the western slopes of the Smoky Mountains, Carter County was inundated by over 7 inches of rain in just over 3 hours. The normally placid 3-foot-deep Doe River was pushed to overflowing.
I was getting ready to go to bed, and that evening, and the phone rang, and it was a squad here, and they said, you know, we was being called out to Carter County for assistance.
It's times like these when rescuers, mostly volunteers, risk their own lives to help others. Jim Carter, a firefighter. Alan Lark, a student. Junior Godsey, a paramedic. And father-to-be, Chad Addington. 4 rescuers, 4 friends, all in it for the same reason.
I guess it's a challenge, and the helping people. That's a big thing.
But this time, nature would be the challenge, and the people they'd save, themselves. They say no amount of training could have prepared them for what they were about to face.
It was the most terrifying experience I've had in my life. We were all totally unprepared for what was going to happen.
Water from the overflowing Doe River had extended roughly 60 feet beyond its banks, threatening a small mobile home community.
Somebody came running up, so there's people trapped. It was a mobile home type area, so we responded to that location immediately.
By the time they launched their boat, 88 tons of water per second were moving downstream. It was a flash flood that would eventually kill 7 people, destroy 400 buildings, and cause $20 million in damage. Meteorologist Dave Dirk says it caught everyone by surprise.
They had never seen the water come up as fast and move as quickly as it did, and we had, especially in the higher elevations, upwards of 1 foot or more of snow, and combine that with 65-degree weather, that was melting very quickly, and then you add this fast rain that came in.
Once in their boat, the 4 rescuers began to realize just what they were up against. This was nothing like they had experienced. What began as a routine rescue had now dissolved into a survival test when the engine on their boat died.
It happened so fast, we were just sucked right down into the main channel of the river.
The 4 men in the boat were suddenly caught in a 4-foot wall of water, speeding downstream at nearly 40 miles per hour.
I think everybody in the boat had the feeling that we were going to die.
The river was too much. In an instant, 2 of the 4 men were tossed out of the boat and into the rapids.
I was thrown out of the boat. Chad was right behind me. I grabbed the first tree limb I could to hang on.
Within minutes, Alan managed to get to shore. But for Chad Addington, it wasn't so easy.
I tumbled end over end. It felt like a few times. I got pushed under the water a few times. I couldn't hear anything but the water rushing. It was getting up over my mouth, and it was starting to splash over my head. At that point, I knew I had to do something or I wasn't going to make it out. All I could think about was my wife at home. She's 6 months pregnant with our first child. I want to see that baby so bad. And I saw a branch up above me. It's the hardest thing I ever did in my life, pulling out of that current.
After battling the current for about a half a mile, Chad was out of trouble. Now, 2 rescuers were out of danger, but the other 2, Jim Carter and Junior Godsey, were still in the boat battling water, debris, and fatigue. They were carried even further downstream, another mile, when their boat slammed into a bridge.
At that point, the bottom came out of the boat.
You really don't have much recourse at this point. No. You're missing the bottom of the boat. You don't have a motor. You have no radios. Yeah. What do you have?
Life jackets. You know, ultimately, that's all we had left.
The boat was destroyed. The 2 men, now clinging to one another, were at the mercy of the river.
We got going end over end in the water, so that broke us apart. And from that point, I never saw Junior again.
4 miles from their original launch point, 3.5 miles from where Chad and Alan were rescued, and 2.5 miles from the spot he and Junior fell into the water. Jim was now in this fight alone. Jim Carter was powerless against a raging, rising river, a river so swollen it carried him through these woods and into this picnic area, where he was eventually found.
At some point, the water just, like I said, became calm, and when it did, I rolled over and grabbed a tree.
It's where Jim held on until rescuers arrived minutes later. Jim was tired and cold. He had used most of his strength battling the current, the same current that now kept his rescuers at a distance, over 150 feet away.
This whole area in here was all covered with water. It was unbelievable, but I was trying to figure out ways, you know, how are we going to get this guy back?
It would seem the hardest part was over. The rescuers had located Jim. But now, the problem facing Mike Raskey and the other rescuers was getting Jim out safely. The swollen river was still raging between them at more than 30 miles per hour. The rescuers decided they couldn't wait for the water to recede. They were worried that Jim was suffering from hypothermia, internal injuries, or might not have the strength to hang on. Rescuer Mike Raskey.
We were going to have to use some type of lines to rescue him.
That line was a thin cord of rope, only 1/16 of an inch thick. It was all the team had to bridge the more than 150 feet of swift-moving water.
That rope was the whole key. If we could have got it tied off here to this tree and then over on that bank, I had no doubt in my mind that we'd have him back in just a matter of minutes.
It sounded simple, but the team had to shoot that cord over half a football field away toward an exhausted and seemingly despondent Jim Carter. They needed the rope to land slightly upstream and beyond the tree Jim was holding on to. Too far and the rope would get caught in underbrush. Too short, the current would wash it away and out of Jim's reach. The first attempt.
The first one went high, and Jim couldn't get hold of it.
They reloaded.
There you go.
This time, a good shot. Now, it was up to Jim.
Jim was going to have to help rescue himself.
Jim had fluid in his lungs and was having trouble breathing, but he still needed to pull the line across the current so that the rescuers could ferry a boat to him.
Tried just every way possible getting that line over to Jim. Things kind of went downhill because our techniques we were using weren't working. We just couldn't work with what we had.
At this point, after struggling throughout the night, the water had receded. But instead of being glad, rescuers were worried. They saw Jim, seemingly disoriented, untie himself and let go of the tree. They yelled for him to retie himself.
Tie yourself back to the tree!
The rescuers felt they were running out of both time and options.
I just wanted him to hang on. I wasn't leaving without him, so I was going to try everything. Finally, I said, find me a helicopter that can lift.
Within an hour, a helicopter arrived, but still couldn't do anything until daylight.
Right at daybreak, they made 3 attempts.
The first 2 tries involved a rescuer in a basket, but the wind was too strong.
The wind started picking up. They had a hard time holding the helicopter steady.
Meantime, the clock was ticking. At the tree, Jim was worried about passing out. They had to do something fast.
There was a basketball court next to his location. and the pilot was going to try to set the helicopter down in that area.
That didn't work either. Too many trees.
Basically, after that, the only thing we had left was the Carter County team swimmers.
Were you getting frustrated that you're out there, they're on the other end, and you just want to get to some dry land and to some warmth?
Well, I knew they had to get somebody over there at that point. Somebody had to come over and tie that rope off.
It was their last desperate attempt. A single member of the rescue team lunged into the water trying to reach Jim. Even though the water had receded, the current was still strong. Another tense moment. The swimmer was pulled underwater and washed down the river. When he resurfaced, the safety line that was supposed to hold the rescuer was gone. He too was now in danger of being washed downstream. He had to swim against the current in an attempt to not only get to Jim, but to save his own life. It was a close call. Finally, he reached a weary Jim Carter and pulled across that rope and the rescue boat. After 5 hours, Jim and his rescuer were pulled back to shore.
When you all were able to pull Jim to safety, what did he tell you?
I'll never forget what he said to me. He looked up at me and held my hand and said, "Mikey, get me the hell out of here." I said, "You're on your way, partner."
Jim Carter made it. 3 of the 4 rescue team members in trouble that day made it out alive. But what had happened to the 4th man, Junior Godsey, the paramedic and volunteer rescuer, swept away? A full day after Jim Carter was rescued, Junior Godsey's body was found at this spot another mile down the river. All Jim Carter knows is that he is a lucky man.
I give credit to the good Lord for that, and I believe he had a purpose for me to stay here, or I wouldn't be here today.
Jim Carter is still on the rescue squad responding to emergency calls. And Chad Addington, the father-to-be, is now a father in full. And though he's still a volunteer, he says he's taming his lust for adventure to spend more time with his wife and daughter.